Haiku Killer dreams in 17 syllables. A ghost story of justice and poetry. The first body is discovered in an alley where cherry blossoms should not grow, but do anyway, their petals pink as lung tissue, as the inside of a mouth, as the specific shade of sunrise the victim will never see again. Detective Nakamura finds the paper folded into a crane, tucked into the dead man's breast pocket like a pocket square, like an invitation to a funeral that has already happened. She unfolds it carefully, evidence. She tells herself, not art, not poetry, not the thing that makes her hands shake as she reads. 17 coins stolen from the collection basket now. Your debt is settled. The victim is Takeshi Mari, accountant, church treasurer, a man whose ledgers told two different stories depending on who was reading them. The missing money was never for God. It was for mistresses and gambling debts, and the small, accumulating cruelties of a man who believed himself invisible. Someone saw him, someone counted, someone wrote it down in the oldest form, in the poetry of death and seasons, and the terrible brevity of human existence, compressed into 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables, the architecture of justice, measured in breath. Nakamura photographs the haiku, labels it, bags it, takes it back to the station where her partner, Detective Sato, reads it and laughs nervously. The way people laugh when they don't know if they're supposed to be afraid yet. A poetry killer, he says. Great, just what Tokyo needs. But Nakamura knows, has always known, the way her grandmother knew before her, the way knowledge passes through blood and bone and the spaces between generations. This is not a killer. This is a yurei, a ghost, a thing that has unfinished business written in 17-syllable installments. The second body appears 3 days later. A businessman found in his office, slumped over his desk, his computer screen still glowing with the emails he was writing, emails to subordinates he'd been harassing for months. Emails that started with, "Can I get your opinion on something?" and ended with descriptions of what he wanted to do to their bodies, what he imagined they wanted him to do, what he believed was his right as their superior. The haiku is pinned to his chest with a letter opener. His letter opener. The irony is not subtle. 37 words. Unwanted in the inbox. Silence answers now. Sato looks at Nakamura. 37 emails. She nods. She's already checked. 37 emails to the same woman over 6 months. Each one progressively worse. Each one saved, documented, reported to HR 3 times. Each report filed away. Each complaint ignored because he was valuable, because he brought in clients, because boys will be boys and girls should learn to take a compliment. The woman quit last week. The man died yesterday. The math is perfect. The poetry is perfect. The justice is terrifying in its precision. Nakamura stands in the office, everything chrome and glass, and the hard surfaces of corporate ambition, and thinks about her grandmother's stories, about the Onryo, the vengeful spirits who cannot rest, about how trauma becomes ghost, how injustice becomes haunting, how the world accumulates victims until they accumulate into something that cannot be ignored, cannot be filed away, cannot be HR'd into non-existence. We need to warn people, Sato says. But warn them about what? Stop being terrible or poetry will kill you. Stop exploiting the vulnerable or someone will count your crimes in syllables. The truth won't fit in a press release. The truth is too old, too elemental, too much like the stories they stopped believing when they stopped being children. Nakamura touches the haiku. The paper is handmade. Washi. Traditional Japanese paper, the kind monks used for sutras, the kind poets used when poetry was still sacred, when 17 syllables could contain the entire universe if you looked at them correctly. We need to find the pattern, she says, but she already knows the pattern. The pattern is guilt. The pattern is deserving. The pattern is every person who thought they could commit small cruelties without consequence, who believed their position protected them, who never learned that the universe keeps better records than they imagine. Bodies 3, 4, and 5 arrive together. A landlord found in his own rental property. The one with the black mold he refused to fix, with the heat that never worked in winter, with the security deposit he never returned. Dead in the apartment of the tenant who finally had enough, who finally reported him, who finally moved out, and 3 days later hanged herself in her new place because the stress had broken something inside her that couldn't be unbroken. The haiku is written on the eviction notice. 12 families displaced. For profit, now your home is 6 feet of cold earth. Body 4 is a teacher found in his classroom, slumped at his desk, surrounded by the essays he was grading. Except he wasn't grading them. He was ranking his students by attractiveness. Had been for years. Had a whole system, spreadsheets, photos taken without permission, detailed notes about whose uniform skirt was shortest, who developed earliest, who would be perfect in a few years. The haiku is stapled to his forehead. 43 children, cataloged like specimens. You are the failure. Body 5 is a nurse found in the hospital supply room, dead among the medications she'd been stealing. Not for herself. She was selling them. Pain medication stolen from terminal patients, from people who were dying, and whose deaths she made more painful because their morphine went to the highest bidder instead of into their IV. The haiku is written on a prescription pad. 60 doses stolen. From the dying, now you know what they suffered through. Nakamura stands in the hospital, looks at the body, reads the poetry, and feels something breaking inside her. Not horror, something else. Something that feels dangerously close to gratitude. This isn't right, Sato says. He's pale. He's been getting paler with each body. This is murder. This is vigilantism. This is justice, Nakamura finishes quietly. That's not justice. Justice is trials and evidence, and the teacher had been reported 5 times in 7 years. Nothing happened. The landlord had 18 code violations filed against him. Nothing happened. The businessman's victim filed 3 HR complaints and a police report. Nothing happened. She looks at Sato. The system failed them, so something else stepped in. You're talking like it's real, like it's actually a ghost. Nakamura doesn't answer, because the truth is worse than ghosts. The truth is that she's not sure it matters if it's real or not. Real ghosts, metaphorical ghosts, the collective unconscious, given form and fury. What's the difference when the bodies are real? When the haikus are real? When the crimes documented in 17 syllables are real? She's been researching. Late at night, when Sato thinks she's going home, she's in the archives, looking at old cases, unsolved murders that have nothing in common except one thing: poetry left at the scene. The first one she finds is from 1923. A man found dead the day after the Great Kanto earthquake. A factory owner who'd locked the fire exits. 53 workers burned alive. His body found in the ruins with a haiku written on rice paper. 53 souls locked. In flame, your key unlocked. Their passage to death. More cases. 1945, 1967, 1989, 2003. Always in times of crisis. Always targeting people who escaped earthly justice. Always documented in the oldest form, in the poetry that has survived everything wars and earthquakes, and the slow erosion of tradition, because some truths are too essential to be written any other way. IV. The media catches on by Body 7. They call the killer Haiku. Just that. One word. Like a poem that has forgotten how to continue. The internet explodes. Half the country is terrified. Half the country is quietly, shamefully thrilled. Online forums spring up overnight. Who deserves a haiku? People nominating bosses, landlords, politicians, abusers. People who believe in the ghost. People who believe in justice. People who believe that 17 syllables might finally say what the courts refuse to acknowledge. Nakamura watches the chaos from her desk. Watches the department scramble to find a killer who might not be killable, might not be catchable, might not even be corporeal. The superintendent holds a press conference, assures the public they're following every lead, promises swift justice, uses all the right words. That night, the superintendent is found dead in his office. The haiku is written on the memo he'd sent to detectives earlier that week. The memo ordering them to stop investigating a councilman accused of sexual assault, to close the case, to let it go, because the councilman was important to the city's economic development. One case closed early. For politics, your case now will never be closed. Nakamura arrives at the scene. The forensics team is already there. Sato is throwing up in a trash can. The superintendent is dead, and the memo is evidence now. And everyone can see what he did. what he prioritized, what he believed was more important than justice. She photographs the haiku. The handwriting is perfect, classical, the kind of calligraphy that takes decades to master, that requires discipline and patience, and an understanding of beauty that has been passed down through generations. "We need to end this," her new supervisor says. Nakamura doesn't remember his name, doesn't care, whatever it takes. This is making the department look complicit, Nakamura finishes. I was going to say incompetent. Same thing. He glares at her. She doesn't care. She's past caring, because she's been counting. 7 bodies, 7 perfect haikus, 7 people who the system protected, who justice ignored, who walked free until poetry caught them. And the thing is, the terrible, impossible, unbearable thing is, she doesn't want to stop it. Body 8 is a surprise. It's a woman, Nakamura's age, found in her apartment. No signs of struggle, no obvious trauma, just dead, sitting in her chair, a haiku in her hands. 42 years of silence while your brother hurt, others complicit. Nakamura reads it 3 times, reads the case file, reads the history. The woman's brother was a predator, serial, violent, had been for decades. The woman knew, had evidence, had watched him hurt people, children mostly, and said nothing. Protected him, lied for him, because he was family, because loyalty was more important than truth, because some people believe that blood is thicker than justice. Her silence enabled 42 victims over 42 years. 1 per year, like a harvest, like a tithe to the god of family loyalty. The haiku deemed her complicit, and Nakamura realizes the ghost isn't just punishing perpetrators, it's punishing everyone who makes perpetration possible. Everyone who sees and doesn't speak. Everyone who knows and doesn't act. Everyone who chooses comfort over courage. She thinks about the cases she's closed too early, the reports she didn't file, the times she knew something was wrong, but the evidence was thin, or the victim was unreliable, or pursuing it would have made waves she couldn't afford to make. She thinks about silence as a form of violence. She goes home, doesn't sleep, writes down every case she's compromised, every time she chose career over justice, every victim she failed. The list is longer than she wants it to be. By morning, she's made her decision. VI Nakamura holds her own press conference. Not officially. The department doesn't know. She just walks out into the media circus, into the cameras and microphones, and the hungry faces of people who want answers. And she tells the truth. She lists the victims, all of them, not the bodies, the people those bodies had victimized. She names names, reads from case files that were closed early, that were buried, that were filed away as insufficient evidence, when the real insufficiency was courage. She talks for 45 minutes. The cameras never stop rolling. Then she resigns. On camera, hands her badge to a stunned reporter, and walks away. That night, she waits, sits in her apartment, drinks tea, watches the cherry blossoms outside her window. It's not the season for them. They shouldn't be blooming, but they are anyway, because Tokyo has become the kind of place where impossible things happen in broad daylight. She's prepared her haiku, written it out on proper paper with proper ink, folded it into a crane. It sits on her coffee table, 17 syllables that might be confession or might be invitation, 37 cases, compromised for comfort now. I await judgment. The hours pass, midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m. Nothing. Dawn comes. The cherry blossoms glow pink in the early light. Nakamura realizes she's not guilty enough, or she's guilty in the right way, or the ghost knows the difference between someone who failed and someone who stopped failing, between complicity through comfort and complicity through cowardice that transforms into courage. She picks up the haiku she wrote, burns it, watches the smoke rise. Somewhere in Tokyo, there are people who still deserve their poetry. The ghost will find them, will count their crimes in syllables, will leave justice folded into cranes. And Nakamura, she has work to do, not as a detective, as something else, someone who speaks when silence is easier, someone who acts when action is costly, someone who remembers that justice, like poetry, requires discipline and precision, and the courage to say true things in forms so perfect they cannot be dismissed. VII. Years pass. The haikus continue. Body 23, body 47, body 61. The pattern holds. The poetry remains perfect. The ghost is patient. Nakamura is old now. She runs a victims advocacy organization. She testifies at trials. She names names. She has become inconvenient, which is to say, she has become necessary. She still keeps the articles, the haikus, the tally of divine accounting, rendered in 17-syllable installments. One night, very late, very old, she finds a haiku on her doorstep. Her hands shake as she unfolds it. This is it, the judgment she escaped decades ago. The poetry has finally come for her, but it reads, 37 cases, now reopened, truth spoken, your debt already paid. Nakamura cries, doesn't know why. Relief or grief, or the complicated gratitude of someone who spent their life afraid of poetry and learned too late that poetry was trying to save her, not condemn her. She keeps the haiku, frames it, hangs it in her office next to a cherry blossom branch she keeps even though it's not the season, even though they shouldn't bloom, even though every botanical law says it's impossible. But Tokyo has become the kind of city where impossible things are just the truth wearing unfamiliar clothes, where ghosts write better poetry than the living, where 17 syllables contain more justice than 17 volumes of legal code, where the old forms persist because the old truths persist, and some things accountability, consequence, the mathematical precision of karma are too essential to ever truly die. VIII. Detective Sato, old now too, visits Nakamura sometimes. They drink tea. Don't talk about the bodies. The haikus. The ghost that never stopped, that's still out there, still counting crimes in syllables, still leaving poetry at the scenes of people who thought themselves immune to consequences. Do you think it's real? Sato asks. He's asked this question for 30 years. Never gets an answer he believes. Nakamura looks out at her impossible cherry blossoms, thinks about all the forms that truth can take, all the ways the universe balances its books. I think, she says slowly, that we live in a world that creates so much injustice that eventually the injustice itself becomes conscious, becomes aware, becomes capable of action. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. They sit in silence. Outside, somewhere in Tokyo, someone is committing a crime they believe will go unpunished. Someone is counting on the system to fail. Someone is trusting in their own invisibility. Someone is very, very wrong. Because somewhere in an alley, on a rooftop, in the space between heartbeats, the ghost is writing, counting syllables, preparing the poetry that will arrive at the scene like cherry blossoms out of season. Beautiful, impossible, inevitable. 5 syllables first, then 7, then 5 again. Justice in 3 lines. The haiku is complete. The ghost folds it into a crane. The crane waits to fly.